Welcome to the Unbound Going Deeper podcast. This is Terry Cook. Today we're going to do something a little different. We have Father Boniface giving a talk at a retreat that was put on for our Unbound team. He was not meaning to be recording these for broadcasting or publishing, but to instruct our team. However, I thought they were really valuable, that if any other Unbound teams might be interested in hearing these talks, then they were worth publishing, even if the audio is a little bit quiet in places, since some of them are long talks. I'm not sure how much actual editing I'm going to do, but either way, I'm sure you'll enjoy these talks by Father Boniface Hicks. The first talk was entitled The Father's Love. So without further ado, here's Father Boniface.
St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, which we've been reading from in Mass for a couple of weeks now. In chapter 15, St. Paul says, "He must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death." He must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. And we're such an interesting group, because we're people who can gather and pray lovingly. We focused all our attention on the Lord here the last hour, and we love the Lord. We've come to know him. I don't know all of you equally well, but I dare say everybody has a personal story of some encounter with the Father's love where you wouldn't be here. So we really have come to know him in very personal ways. I dare say multiple encounters with the Father's love. We've come to know him over time. We've come to know him in the church. We've come to know him in prayer groups and in the context of loving community. And we've come to know that love very deeply. We also are here because we believe in freedom for everybody. And this sort of interesting merger of two worlds, this world of some kind of spiritual warfare and this world of the Father's love. There would seem to be two things like oil and water. How does spiritual warfare fit into the Father's love? And yet somehow we all know this because we're embodying it, because we're here together. But one of the beautiful things about Unbound that we've all experienced is that it's kind of engaged this world of spiritual warfare, and there's a point to those expressions, and St. Paul uses those expressions, especially maybe Jesus in some different ways, but Unbound has this beautiful way it engages that world, but rather than kind of ramping up that world, because the world of warfare, as we know, is a world of power and pride, a world of domination and destruction, a world of captives and exiles and orphans. I mean, the world of warfare is a terrible place. And in fact, if we only painted the world in terms of the language of warfare, I dare say we would drive everybody away, and rightly so, because who in the world wants to be part of that world? But there's a certain engagement in that place, and some people come to us and they already have some sense of that world. They feel that there is an enemy, and because there is an enemy, as St. Paul says, he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. There are enemies. There are those who are working against the beautiful world of the Father that we've come to know. And some people already have some understanding of that, and they have engaged in popular culture, has done all kinds of damage in that, and a lot of movies have done a lot of damage in that and have sowed a lot of seeds of fear. Probably we do a degree better than in some places in Italy, everybody's got the evil eye and is under curses. And in Africa, we've got a similar kind of fear of all sorts of evil forces that are just kind of everywhere. And it creates a certain sort of paranoia. So in some cases, we're engaging people who are already in that mindset, and we're helping them very gently to take that without discrediting any of it, because there's truth in that, obviously. There's truth in that. But we engage that, and we have this beautiful ministry of bringing that to the Father's love, bringing that to the Father's blessing, and starting to see, rather than focusing on all of these strange things going on outside me, focusing on what's happening inside me that I have some authority over. Bringing this back into a question of where I have authority in my own life. And we help people in such a beautiful way in Unbound to step into that authority by not even doing it for them, which could actually reinforce the sense of being out of control, that I have to come to this, I'm already under the dominion of all of these strange, unruly forces that are dominating my life, and now I have to come and place myself under this gentle and loving person who is going to dominate my life instead of them. That's not helpful. So instead of placing ourselves under and then letting this battle take place, and maybe that's happened in some families where small children figure out that they can have this battle, or there is this battle taking place sort of over their heads, and that doesn't make them feel more safe. Even if they feel like one parent is on their side, if you're in the middle of a war zone, you don't feel like you're really safe. And if we paint this world merely as a war zone, then nobody is going to feel like they're really safe. Nobody is going to feel like they can really open to the Father's love. So we have this beautiful way, this model that Neil and company have designed that helps to engage those kinds of fears, engage those kinds of experiences, and bring it back to, how is this affecting you? How do you see the influence of this? I'm afraid I'm under a curse. Okay, well, where are you seeing that in your life? Where is that curse affecting you? How is it? And then we start to find where the openings are that people are susceptible to a curse, that they're susceptible to believing that something can control them, that they feel out of control and they don't feel that they have a Father who will help them and who will love them. So this beautiful way of engaging some of those fears. People that are afraid that they've done things because of their engagement in the occult or their sinful activity, or they're aware of a lot of mess in their life. They know that, and they don't know what to do about it. They don't have any way of standing up against it. They don't know how to engage faith. We have this beautiful way of receiving them, helping them to see it, giving them the words, being a firm support for them, helping them to stand against it. And as they do that, they start to experience sonship. They start to experience themselves as sons and daughters of the Father, that they are in a place that's safe, that they belong to a family, that they have an identity, that they have an authority over their lives, that they can stand on their own 2 feet, that they are lovable, and that they are loved. And those are the things that create seismic shifts in our hearts that cause something to go kerchunk and to fall into place, maybe for the first time, to help people really feel themselves as loved, that they are beloved children of the Father. So that's this beautiful ministry that we have to engage a lot of fears and a lot of feelings of being out of control, a lot of feelings of disinheritance and lack of belonging, a lack of purpose, a lack of goodness, and to really affirm that. So we affirm that by giving people a path. But there are so many things that are happening. I think some of the most beautiful, I just mentioned this at the beginning, I think some of the most beautiful things happen in Unbound in ways that we don't actually, that are not any of the 5 keys. The whole structure that makes Unbound so beautiful is actually the structure of our engagement. And I love that first question on the survey. Did you feel loved? there's a reason. That's not any of the five. Well, it's the Father's blessing, essentially, right? I mean, that's really what it comes into. But they begin to experience the Father's blessing as soon as they walk in the door, or even by our further outreach. The way that we engage people, even by inviting them to come, the way that we invite them, the way that we welcome them. And certainly when one of us or a couple of us sit down with them for a prayer session, the way that we engage people helps them they already begin to experience the Father's blessing. And the way that we do that makes all the difference. Because we actually become sacramentals. We become a sacramental presentation of the Father's blessing. So that can't be substituted. If it were just a matter of words, we could set up a tape player, right? Just have a tape player that, they have those nice internet things, answer these 10 questions. Okay, answer the questions, and then you get a formula out. Okay, pray this formula. I don't think any of us are under the impression that we could be replaced as Unbound leaders by a clever computer program that would analyze your problems and give you a formula that you could pray and it would set you free. Right? I don't think anybody's under that impression. Because the context of that listening, loving attention is so critical for helping someone be able to open their hearts to speak words to the Father and to receive from the Father His blessing. And a lot of that is baked into the structure itself. We do things in the way that we engage people lovingly and gently, the way that we let them have a chance to share their story. Because everybody has a story, and every story deserves to be heard. When we give people undivided attention, we say, you are worth my time. You are worth listening to. Your story, the story of your life, which primarily in that setting, we're focusing on the story of the wounds, the story of the failures, the story of the brokenness, the ugliest, some of the ugliest parts of your story is worth listening to, and it's redeemable. We believe that can be redeemed. You don't believe that. But I believe that, and together we believe that. And we shepherd people into that place just by listening, the way that we listen. Taking notes, I love this interaction with Neil at one point. He said, I find that when I take notes, people get kind of excited that they have something that's worth writing down. Even when it's, sometimes, whatever, some of these terrible experiences and things that they've done, you're like, oh, okay, you're going to write that down. I'm not disturbed by it, and it's worth writing down so that we can look at it together. There's a whole kind of communication that's happening without any communication happening. Without any words being exchanged, I'm saying a lot of things by the way that I receive someone. And I take them at face value. I let them share their story. And I take note of it, and I'm listening for ways that we can just bring this to the Father. That's always my simple description of Unbound. It's a way of turning someone's story into prayer. And we really help people turn their story into prayer. And we give them the courage by praying with them to actually offer that to the Father. And so as I'm listening, loving, and then when I go back through someone's story, or when I clarify a point, I say, when your father did that to you, how did you feel about that? Or when that happened to you, did it cause a lot of fear in your heart? Well, not exactly fear, but I started to really get angry and protect myself, or whatever it is. And we note that, but our clarification tells somebody, I'm listening attentively, and the details matter to me. What you've gone through matters to me. And I'm going to take note of that. That must have been really hard, and well, we're gonna bring that to the Lord. So we do that, and then when we do that summary, after that interview process, we've really taken our time with people, we're letting them share their story, we're taking note of the details, we're listening for ways that we're really listening for ways that they want to give their heart to the Father. There's always a danger. You need to. Let's not do that. There are enough moral imperatives going on in the world, but we hear, in fact, that they want to turn their heart. They're sorry for what they've done. They feel badly that things have gone, that they've wandered away, that they stopped praying, that they turned their heart on God, that they stopped believing, that whatever it is. So we hear the sorrow that's there. We help them turn that into prayer. You can speak that to the Lord. And we hear the ways that they've been hurt, and we ask them, is that, are you able to let that go? Do you want to forgive that person? And sometimes, it's where it's helpful to have the teaching right there together with the prayer session like we do at a conference, but there may be a place for just helping them to understand, forgiveness is, and all of the things that we know. Do you want to hand that over? Do you want to let go of that? I heard some of these lies. I heard some of these patterns of affliction, these ways that you've been hurt and that you've kind of repeated that. Do you want to renounce these things? And in doing that, in providing that summary, we're showing them again, I've listened to every detail of what you've had to say to me. I've taken it seriously, I've valued it, and I'm helping you now to bring this to the Father. And I'm helping you to take hold of your own authority as His beloved son or His beloved daughter, and I'm going to help you stand in that and stand against some of those patterns, some of those lies. I'm going to help you to forgive. I'm going to help you to turn your heart back to the Father and profess your love for Him. And there's something that's so fatherly about that, isn't it? Isn't that what a loving father is supposed to do? And even though you're not all men, you still are representing the Father, really. The Heavenly Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth takes its name. And all of that love that we're offering and accompanying people is really a representation. We're representatives of the Father. As St. Paul talks about ambassadors. Think of ourselves as ambassadors for the Father, representing Him, reconciling. And so, as we do that in this very fatherly way, there's a courage that we start to see in people as they're ready to face things that they couldn't face on their own. In fact, that they couldn't even see on their own, that they hadn't fully been able to take hold of. They're able to open up wounds and let themselves be seen and loved, maybe for the first time in that context. And they're able to share that. And the way we receive that and help them through. And I like, anyway, we're in these strange COVID times, but I was really, I have a visceral memory of Neil, really coming up next to me and putting a hand on my arm, asking me, can I put my hand on your arm? And then putting a hand on my arm. And I said, why do you do that? And he said, some people are facing some really hard stuff and they need some support. Beautiful. Again, fatherly presence. We're really offering that fatherly presence for people. I'm going to be here to support you. I believe that you can be set free. I believe in the power of God, and I'm going to help you to believe in the power of God. We're going to do this together. That kind of loving accompaniment is so powerful. And we're here, again, because we've seen it. We've experienced that. We've seen the Father really show up. And we've seen how our loving presence is someone. And the intercessors are part of that too. There's obviously a particular engagement in that one-on-one. And someone is able to really focus on, and a single person is able to be a kind of embodiment of the Father, a sacramental presentation of the Father. But those loving prayer supporters on both sides or on one side, we really feel that too. Someone is really here. Sometimes I think that the intercessors, and I've been in some sessions, I try never to repeat these things, but they go on for quite a while, a couple hours, 3 hours, something like that. The intercessor has been quietly praying 3 holy hours, right? I mean, a lot of us have a hard time doing 1 holy hour, and that loving intercessor, like 3 holy hours, one after another right there. But beautiful, and the dying to self that intercessor has to go through to really be present and to pray and to be that loving presence. So all of that creates the most ripe environment for healing. And that's where I think, sometimes I wonder, I want to have this conversation with Neil, sometimes I wonder if he realizes all of those dimensions that he has, and he is, if you've met him, I mean, he really is so fatherly. He really has that just strong, firm, gentle, available, loving presence. And you have this feeling like, my Father's going to get me through this. Neil really gives you that kind of sense. It's just really flows out of him. But he's created an environment in Unbound that we're able to provide that kind of fatherly presence, that kind of loving presence, that it's like, we're going to get through this. We're going to get you through this and help you to bring this before the Lord and help you to pray with it. And then by the time that we do that and we work through some of those obstacles, we get some of that stuff out of the way, we've really heard the person's story. We're in this prime position to offer the Father's blessing. I mean, it's already been flowing through us by being in the position of the Father for the last, half an hour in a short session, or an hour and a half, or 2 or 3 hours, or whatever it's been. We've just been in this position of the Father loving this person, really internalizing their story, walking with them through some of the most painful things. We're in a position to speak right into their hearts, to speak right into the places where they were not loved, where they were rejected, where they were abandoned, where they hurt others, where they were hurt by others. We can speak into that and do what fathers do, bestow identity and belonging and purpose and destiny. We can give people what they should have received at a young age, or that we all need to receive again and again to have reinforced for us. We can speak into that so beautifully from that position. But you can see also, what I'm describing. I presume you're also like me, and you're not always at your best. I hope that what I'm describing describes what you are at your best, and what you strive for in doing Unbound ministry. And I say it to reinforce it in all of us. I think what we fall into at our worst is we start to get a little bit operational, we get a little bit functional, and we start to, heard this before, like sketch some of these things down, got some related spirits. Sometimes we're more worried about what we're going to say and how we're going to lead them, and maybe also worried about, like, is this thing going to work, evaluating, well, this is a light one or this is a heavy one. We're categorizing. We're doing a lot of these things which are not what loving fathers do, right? And that's a temptation. That's a danger, and especially as we get better, as we get more comfortable with it, things like that, it's easy to fall into some of those patterns and not see the person in front of me as a unique and unrepeatable individual with whom I have not prayed before, or who is I'm getting the chance for the first time to bring to the Father. This is not a pattern that I'm repeating, or an operation that I'm applying, or something, a conveyor belt activity or something like that. This person has all of their own unique experiences, and they deserve to have their story heard, and they deserve to be loved individually and to feel that. And I'll tell you, there's no faking it. You can't fake it. If your mind is away, they know it. Whether they notice it explicitly, whether they say it or not, they know the difference. If you're just going through a pattern, if you're going through a process, they know it. And you can't fake it. Now, the more sensitive they are, the more they know it. And some people may just shut down completely and shut you off if they detect that. Other people will, in a hopeful way, push through. Some people are not quite as sensitive, and they may not notice the first couple times that your mind wanders, and that you start planning out the rest of your day, and you start wondering exactly how long we're going to be here anyway, and some of the other things that, we're all human. We experience these things. I do hours of spiritual direction in a row. I know what it's like to be a little bit all over the place, falling asleep sometimes. Writing is awfully helpful for that in Unbound. But to really summon our best, realizing that that's not an optional dimension of Unbound. So that loving presence, that listening, that way of opening our hearts. Certainly the person who's going through Unbound is very vulnerable. We know that, and so that's why we treat with such sensitivity, compassion, tenderness, care. We hold their hearts in our hands. But the person who's leading Unbound is also vulnerable, because love makes us vulnerable. Let me show you how vulnerable love is. We should have an image or crucifix. That's how vulnerable love is. And Unbound is always going to be, for one who is leading it with love, it's always going to be a crucifixion of some kind. Because when we open our hearts to someone, then we share their suffering. We go through their story with them. We allow ourselves to be touched by their feelings of desperation or brokenness or rejection or failure. Or we allow ourselves to be touched by their fears. They're not just items to catalog and to just apply like, take 3 aspirin and call me in the morning. Well, this looks like this could use a couple of Klonopins, We're not just diagnosing and giving pills. We're really receiving with love the other. And that whole experience is so healing. It's really bringing them again into this tangible experience of the Father's love through our presence, through our ministry. But it requires an opening of our hearts. When we do that, that can open up some of our stuff. It hurts. There's a price that we pay in leading others to healing. There's a price that we share in. He paid the full price. We just pay a little price of presence, of attention, of sharing and suffering, compassion. We share that, but we pay a price there, and we can often be exhausted after a session, or at least be really feeling it. And that's why it's important for us, and we'll have a chance in this time to share with each other a bit. And I know many of you are friends, spouses, and have a chance to share with each other at different times. And it's really important for us. We need to be doing that and share some of our experiences, obviously reverently and anonymously, but when we need to talk confidentially with a friend who understands Unbound, with a team member, then to work through some of the stuff. I mean, some of the things that people have been through, some of you have also been through. Some of the things people have been through are really devastating and has an impact, especially the first few times you start to hear some of that stuff. Can be really shocking. It can be hard to understand how to process that. What do we do with that? How do we surrender that? How do we give that to the Lord? So that's all there. But the point is that we want to keep entering into Unbound with very soft hearts. Our hearts should become increasingly softer. The more that we do, the more that we grow closer to the Lord, and the more that we minister to others, our hearts should keep becoming softer, not more calloused. Heard this, done that, get it done, but softer, more attentive, more sensitive, able to see places that are hurt. It's something that people often do. I'm sure you've noticed. They'll speak kind of quickly and casually over things that are super painful. And it almost gives the impression like that wasn't that painful. But we start to pick up on some of those things. Wow, what happened to you? That must have been devastating. And now they see that you actually respect the pain, and they're willing to take a step deeper into it and share a little bit more. But that kind of attention is what provides the context of healing and Unbound, and what gives the foundation. By that time, when we've really touched a lot of these wounds and we've connected them to certain words and phrases, whether it's a worthlessness or a fear of failure, or a spirit of pride, or a spirit of envy, or a spirit of control, or whatever it is, we've touched those places with loving attention, And then when we lead someone back in prayer through all of that, and they name those things, that grace of our presence, our attention, our love, connects with God's grace and just goes right into that place in their hearts. And it just becomes an entryway for so many beautiful things to come into their hearts. And so that prayer time just moves through so beautifully. And we really start to see some doors unlocked, and they really take hold of their freedom in a beautiful way. But again, all of that is prepared for by the whole mode of that interview, of that listening process that's so essential for us. So, listening from the Father's heart is what that's all about. So I want to keep pressing into some of those dimensions. Well, let me circle back now to he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. What does the reign of God look like? Get my prop out again. I only have one and I only need one. Yeah. It's what the reign of God looks like. He must reign until he has put all of his enemies under his feet. And if we want to reign with him, and if we want to help bring his enemies under his feet, this is the model for us. A love that is vulnerable and that suffers with. That's the reign of God. So, this is spiritual warfare. This is the battlefield. The battlefield is humility, self-emptying love, loving attention. The battlefield is a gentleness that doesn't get defensive and fight back. The battlefield is surrender and trusting in God to win the victory. Jesus is the one who reigns. And we reign with him by sharing his cross.